In this video, I'll be talking about the definition of white privilege, common harmful actions experienced often by people from BAME backgrounds, and what it means to be a true ally. The definition of white privilege is an inherent advantage possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterised by racial inequality and injustice. It's really important to add here that white privilege doesn't mean that you haven't had a hard life. It just means that the colour of your skin isn't something that's made your life hard. So it's important that you use your intersectional privileges to support others. A lot of people don't understand the concept of white privilege. So here's a checklist which might help explain to you some of the privileges that a white person might have over a person from a BAME background. What I want you to do is put both hands up, and if a statement applies to you, just put one finger down at a time. I've got 10 statements. The first statement is, people know how to pronounce my name. I'm never mocked or perceived as a threat because of my name. If that applies to you, put the first finger down. The second statement is, I'm not threatened by the police because I know that they're there to protect me. The third one, when going on holiday, I don't have to consider how the country historically treats people who look like me before booking. I can be sure that my children or nieces and nephews will be given curriculum materials that testify to the existence of their race. I don't have to worry about being chosen last for a job due to my race. People of my race are widely represented in media and resources. When I'm told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm told that people who look like me are what made it. When I'm told about our national heritage or civilization, I'm told that my race made it what it is now. My race or ethnicity will not make people around me feel uncomfortable. I can start a new job and know that most people around me will look like me. And lastly, I don't have to think about my race or ethnicity. In fact, it doesn't really bother me and I don't think about it at all. Now, as you can see, I still have all 10 fingers up because none of those statements apply to me. And that's just one example of how white privilege can affect people who look like me, for example. One thing that can be particularly damaging is unconscious biases. This is a term which relates to social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside of their own conscious awareness. It's important to note that everybody holds unconscious biases, but they are particularly damaging towards minorities. A study in 2017 showed that young black girls as young as 5 years old are seen as less innocent and less in need of nurturing than their white counterparts. And this was actually a study carried out on teachers in 2017. More examples of unconscious biases are assumptions that someone with a foreign accent might not be as clever or as educated as someone with a Southern British accent. Or assumptions that a black man might be intimidating or that a black woman might be angry. Another example is assumptions that all Asians are incredibly clever. This is known as a positive stereotype, but this is just as damaging because it puts an anticipation on people that they might not actually be able to reach, which isn't put on everyone else. Microaggressions are also just as damaging. And a microaggression is a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalised group, such as racial or ethnic minority. Studies actually show that experiencing microaggressions leads to increased risk of depression, trauma, and suicide. Some personal examples of microaggressions are people saying to me, "Can you comb your hair?" Because I have an afro. Yes, I can comb my hair. Or people touching my hair. And this can be likened to Sarah Bartman, who was a slave, who was actually sold to a zoo. And she was really exoticized because of her really Afrocentric features, like her hair and her big lips and her big nose and her big bottom. But doing things like that can be linked all the way back to that, and it's not nice. Someone said to me once, "You look like one of those scary boys that sells drugs in those bags." This is a speech therapist who said this to me. Someone also said, "You must like the hot weather because you were born in Africa." I wasn't, I was born here, born and bred in Britain. And another thing that I hear quite often is, "I'm not even going to attempt to say that name." And really what they're missing out is that because it sounds African or it sounds Sri Lankan. But actually that name is worthy of being said. And if you don't know how to say someone's name, find out from them. Ask them the question. It's not going to do any damage to ask. Whilst I was looking into the research about microaggressions, I read an article which labelled it as death by 1,000 cuts. And I thought this was a really powerful label to give it, because actually sometimes the incidences are so subtle and so indirect that you feel like you can't report them or that they don't really matter. But actually, over time, it really wears down on the mental health and the kind of resilience of the person who receives the microaggressions. Now that I've shared some information about microaggressions, unconscious bias and white privilege, you might be thinking, okay, well, what do I do about this information now? So what I want to discuss is, what is an ally? The definition of allyship is the continuous process in which someone with privilege and power seeks to learn about the experiences of a marginalised group of people and then ultimately empathises with their challenges and builds relationships with that group of people. Ways to be an ally: recognise your privilege, use your privilege to support marginalised people, and that's often people who are unheard or unseen. Check yourself for ingrained behaviours like microaggressions and unconscious bias, and be active in the pursuit of social justice. Reflect on how you can be a better ally to your colleagues, to your patients, to your students and to your clients. Ultimately, a true ally knows that it's not enough to be not racist, and that anti-racism should be at the hearts of our teams and at the hearts of our organisations in order to make the BAME experience a better one.